Hey, sports card fans, it's John Wade Boggs fan. Hope you're all doing well. There are so many ways to collect sports cards. For me, since about 1997, I have collected Wade Boggs cards. Now, not exclusively. In fact, over the last maybe 3 years or so, I have greatly expanded my collection of vintage baseball cards. But at the same time, I've still collected Wade Boggs cards. And as a Wade Boggs super collector, I want to make sure that I have an updated checklist of all the Boggs cards that are out there. And honestly, over the last year or so, I've gotten really behind in updating my Boggs checklist. So I took the time over this past week to go through all the different sets that came out in 2022 and so far in 2023 to update my checklist. And as I was doing so, I don't want to say I got depressed, but I got a bit disheartened in terms of all the cards that had been produced with Wade Boggs on them and how many of them not only do I not have, but are for the most part unattainable. And so in this video, I wanted to talk about and pose the question of whether we are seeing the death of player collectors. Now, I realized just from the start and for probably a long time, player collectors are sort of a small, very, very, very small segment of the hobby. You do have set builders, and I think even set builders are a small portion of the hobby. And I think even below that are those collectors who just focus on a particular player. Even those who collect a vintage player, a retired Hall of Famer that played during the vintage age of baseball cards, they tend to only collect the cards during their playing days. So there is a limited and finite checklist that they have to work off of. So it's a lot easier for them to go after cards, and some of them are very rare and hard to come by, and that's the challenge that keeps them going to see how many cards they can get. But for me, Wade Boggs is not considered a vintage player. He's more of a modern player in that he started his career in the early 80s, sort of after the vintage age, and his cards or cards featuring him are still being produced today well after he has retired. And so again, just looking through the checklist that I put together, I'm finding it harder and harder to be a player collector. And so I have a couple topics I want to talk about here, just to show how hard it is in today's environment to be a player collector, and whether after folks like me stop collecting, hopefully that will be long in the future, whether any of the younger generation are going to take up player collecting as a focus within the hobby, or whether I am part of a dying breed. So the first thing that I want to talk about is the manufacture of rare cards, the manufactured rarity of cards these days. It seems, and again, I'm going to tie this a lot to Wade Boggs cards. I think it translates to other players as well, both retired and current players. It seems that a lot of the card manufacturers just key their production or the hits in their sets to really low numbered cards. We're talking serial numbered 10 or less, tons of one of ones. And they're doing that because that's what the current hobby is asking for. You know, they want serial numbered cards, autograph cards, patch cards, or a combination of them. Those are the cards that they buy the boxes for to get those hits. I've even seen videos of, upcoming rookies, hot prospects, where people don't even really collect their base rookie card. It's all about the parallels or the low serial numbered or the autograph patch cards. Those are the ones that they want to collect, and they want to collect them because those have the potential to increase in value. I had someone comment on one of my videos fairly recently, and it didn't really have anything to do with the topic of the video, but I think he noticed my YouTube name, Wade Boggs Fan, and he's like, why collect Wade Boggs? And so I didn't go into why, but I just told him that, hey, this is someone that I like to collect and enjoy. And he replied that, I can't fathom, collecting just one player and that's it. I don't know if he collects modern cards or is a younger collector, older collector, I'm not sure. But he said for him, and I think it's true for a lot of collectors or those in the hobby that are into more of the modern cards, he says he buys for value. And so he can see even vintage cards, picking up a certain player, a Mickey Mantle, Hank Aaron, those types of players, because they would tend to hold or increase in value over time. So he was looking at the hobby from a standpoint of, hey, I want to buy cards that I think will appreciate in value. I don't care necessarily who the player is, but I'm more in the aspect of the card, maybe the grade. Again, is it a rookie card, a rookie auto, those types of things. And so that was his focus. And I think generally speaking, those who collect modern cards have that somewhat similar focus. Now, maybe players or collectors just getting into the hobby may want to start collecting players of their, cards of their favorite player on their favorite team, and maybe that's an introduction into the hobby. But I don't know if the younger generation, and I hate to use that term, but I've been collecting for probably over 40 years now, so I'm considering myself an old timer. But whether the younger generation has any desire to collect a player and try to get as many cards of that player as they can, like I have with Wade Boggs. The other thing that's sort of hindering or making being a player collector more difficult are all the high-end products that are out there. And as a player collector, I don't buy these $200, $300, $400, $500 boxes hoping to pull a Wade Boggs card. I wait until other people do that and then put those cards on eBay to sell. Well, unfortunately, with a lot of these high-end boxes, you may get one or two packs with X number of cards. Sometimes the box is actually one pack of maybe 2 cards. And so if someone does hit a Wade Boggs auto out of 5, they'll list it on eBay for $250 because they want to try to get their money back. They think, oh, Boggs is a Hall of Famer, so I should be able to get $250 for this auto out of 10. Well, I have so many autos out of 10 that I've purchased for $50, $60. I'm not going to attempt to make an offer, and some of them don't even say, hey, not even buy it now or best offer. Some of them do, but if you offer $50, they're going to say no way, because I need to get my money back. Now, are they going to be able to sell those cards for $100, $250? I don't know, but I'm certainly not going to be paying that much for them. And so, I see a lot of cards on eBay that I don't have, but the sellers, because if they bought the product, they want to try to get their money back, they're asking way too high. But Boggs is not that popular within the hobby. I mean, I love Boggs cards, but I mean, I think Beckett still lists him as a semi-star. He's a Hall of Famer, one of the greatest third basemen of all time. Yet, from a hobbyist perspective, he's like a semi-star. It used to work out in my favor back in the day because I could pick his cards up cheaper. But now, because the card has an auto and a patch, they're all low serial numbers, people who pull those cards think that they can get a ton of money for them. And I know with talking to other Boggs collectors, not too many are willing to spend, maybe $250 for a one of one. If they're trying to go for a rainbow, which I'm going to talk about later here, maybe they'll spend $250 if they really, really want that card. But that's a rarity. So the next topic or area that is making it really difficult to be a player collector are all the number of parallels that over the last 2, 3, 4 years has just gotten out of hand. And the two companies that are the biggest offenders are Leaf and Panini. Now, do I like Leaf and Panini products generally? Yes. And I know that Leaf is doing something very special for the members of the Boggs Trust. And I do want to give them props for doing this very special thing for us Wade Boggs collectors. But I have to call it as it is and as I see it. And Leaf and Panini, their products recently have come up with so many parallels that it's almost impossible as a player collector to get them all. For one example, for Panini, in their 2023 Donruss product, in addition to the base card, and I think it's the Retro 2000, I think, if I'm not mistaken, that Boggs is in addition to the base card, there are 19 parallels, 19 different parallels. Some of them are not serial numbered, but are harder to find. The pack odds are a lot tougher, but they're not serial numbered. But a lot of them are serial numbered, and a lot of them, in some cases, there's more than one one of one version. Back in the day, and I hate to use this term back in the day, but I'm making a comparison from when I was a huge Boggs collector to now that I'm still a Boggs collector, but just maybe not as much. If you were able to pick up the one of one in a particular set, you would usually have to buy maybe 4, maybe 5 other parallel versions to be able to create or build or have a rainbow. Now with 2023 Donruss, that takes 20 cards. And like I said, I didn't double check on my checklist here, but at least one of them is a one of one, and there may even be 2 one of ones out of those 20. So the opportunity for me to get a full rainbow of 2023 Donruss is pretty much impossible. I'm still working on the 2019 Prism. I think there are 2 parallel versions. One of them is serial numbered, one is not. And I think there's, again, 19 or 20. And I still have not been able to complete the rainbow. And that's not including the one of one. So even if I were able to find those 2 other parallels, I don't have the one of one. I think another Boggs collector, had picked that one up. But even then, that's been a tremendous journey just to get those other parallels to say I have a near rainbow minus the one of one. So the parallels have become very, very hard to continue as being a player collector, or even start to be a player collector. The other thing is some of the checklists. And again, I want to have an accurate checklist of not only what cards are out there, what parallel versions, but what the serial numbers are. So again, when I'm looking through eBay listings, sometimes the way they name these parallels, you don't know what they look like. Sometimes you have a pewter and a silver version. depending on the picture taken for the listing, a pewter is sort of a grayish color. Well, silver could be that as well. And then you may get a prismatic silver versus a regular silver. Okay, well, one of them may have a little bit of a different shine to it than the regular silver. Again, depending on the image, and even the seller may not even know exactly what that parallel version is. And so in putting my checklist together, and again, I hate to pick on Leaf. Topps does this as well. But for Leaf, a lot of their products, and I download their checklists, and I do appreciate them having a spreadsheet of their entire checklist with all the different parallels. But oftentimes, they'll put serial numbered 10 or less, serial numbered 25 or less, serial numbered 8 or less. Well, what is it? I mean, you would think they'd be able to take the time to say, okay, this card for Boggs is serial numbered out of 10, but of a different player it's out of 25, or at a different player it's out of 20. They should have the production numbers. They should be able to put that into the spreadsheet. So for a lot of my cards in my checklist, I have, okay, serial numbered out of 25. Well, if I'm looking for a card on eBay and I see a version that's out of 10, and again, I can't quite tell what that parallel is. Is that a card that I'm missing on my checklist? Do I already have it? Because I'm not sure. I can't go off the serial number. And sometimes different parallels have the same out of serial number that are very similar. So it's very confusing as a player collector to know which ones I have and which ones I don't have compared to what I'm looking for, say, on eBay listings. And as for Topps, they're not immune to this. Over the last, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years now, they're coming out with the Topps Archives retired player autographs. One box, one card of a repurchased card that they have the player sign. And for Wade Boggs, most often they're all one of ones. And Topps does not release a checklist of what cards that they bought back of Wade Boggs that they had him sign every year. And sometimes they've repeated the same card, say 1989 Topps, will be in the 2019 Topps Archives signature. They'll be in 2020 and in 2022. So unless you can see the little foil date or the seller accurately puts down the year, I don't know to add it. And unless it comes up on eBay or a fellow Boggs collector shows me one that they picked up, since they're all one of ones, unless I see it actively for sale, I don't know that it's out there. And so that's hard, even just maintaining a checklist. And again, I'm probably not going to own any of those one of ones, but just to know that those cards are out there is important for me as a player collector to have a complete checklist. And it's nearly impossible with those Topps Archives retired player signature cards because they're all one of ones and there's no checklist out there. The other thing that has made it difficult to be a player collector is the rise of multiplayer cards. And again, I hate to be bad on Leaf, but they are the biggest offender in this case as well. Now, Topps has done it with their Topps triple threads. I love Topps triple threads, but you have cards that have maybe 2 other players, some booklet cards that may have 5 other players. Well, that makes it even harder to acquire some of those cards, because if it was a single Boggs card, I'd be going up against fellow Boggs collectors or fellow Red Sox collectors or Yankees collectors or Devil Rays collectors. There are some team collectors out there that want Wade Boggs as part of their collection. They're not a Boggs collector per se, but I know there's some Yankees collectors out there And if Wade Boggs is featured in a Yankees uniform, they try to add that to their collection. So for single Boggs cards, I have a group of competitors going after cards, especially if they're auctions. Well, for multiplayer cards, if there's two other cards, now I'm dealing with potential player collectors or team collectors of those other players. And for Leaf, there's sometimes cards where he's one of 4, 6, 8 or more players on a card. So I'm fighting with Cal Ripken collectors, Tony Gwynn collectors, Don Mattingly collectors, you name it. Sometimes he's featured along with some other Red Sox greats or Yankees greats. That is a huge amount of competition just because I'm interested in the card because Boggs is on it. There's so many other people that are interested in that same card. And if you also have a low serial number, say out of 10, 8, 5, those cards, either one, the seller wants a huge amount for them, or two, if they do go up for auction, they sell for still, from my budget or what I'm willing to spend, way above my target level for that card. And after a couple of them go, I mean, that's it. You just don't see them show up anymore. Now, I want to talk about specifically some numbers from my Wade Boggs checklist to give you a little bit more concrete information of what I'm dealing with as being a player collector, and how, again, I don't want to use the word frustrating, but it's just weighing on me in terms of continuing to be a player collector. Now, don't get me wrong. I am never going to stop collecting Wade Boggs cards. I may focus more of my hobby money towards vintage cards, but I'm always going to continue collecting Wade Boggs cards. I've put so many years into it. I love Wade Boggs as a guy. He's just a great person and a great all-time great player. And I just love my Wade Boggs cards, and I want to continue to grow that collection. But I have definitely lost the fire, I guess you can say, in just trying to go out and collect as many as I can, because it's just becoming more and more difficult to do. All right, so some of the cards and numbers from my Boggs checklist and my collection. The number of cards just from 2022. Now, to give some perspective here, I'm going to pull up my checklist here. For the longest time, especially during Boggs's playing days career, this was well before so many different parallels and even autographs or even game used cards. He'd have maybe 100 to 200 cards, maybe on the low end, 50, 60 cards in a year. But that was fairly easy to try to go after. Now, in 2004, though, the number of different Wade Boggs cards jumped to 511. Now, that was a pretty hard undertaking to go after. But the year after, in 2005, now this may have corresponded with him being elected to the Hall of Fame, but there were also a lot of new sets that emerged in 2005. A lot of them were based on Hall of Famers, and of course, with Boggs being a new inductee, he was included in that, and there were a bunch of parallels as well throughout those sets. So 2005 was just a huge expansion of the number of different cards that were produced. In fact, in 2005 alone, there were 1,139 different Wade Boggs cards just in 2005. Now, after that, though, it sort of went back down to normal levels. But then starting around 2016, 2017, it started to come back up again. I think there were more sets, more parallels. And so by 2018, it was back up to 587. Then in 2019, 506. In 2020, 729 different Boggs cards. In 2021, 721. And in 2022, 1,057 different Wade Boggs cards. And already through 2023, we're up to 335. Now, there's not too much time left in the year. I know there are a few more sets that are going to be released. So maybe the number of new cards being produced in 2023 should be maybe not quite back to the normal years, still on the maybe a little bit higher end, but definitely not like in 2022. Now, back in 2005, when there were 1,139 different cards, I did manage to collect, and wasn't just done in 2005, but since 2005, I've managed to add 607 of those, or about 53%. So that was pretty good, but that was when I was solely focused and pretty much put all my hobby dollars into Wade Boggs cards. And of course, back then, there were some low serial numbered cards, but I was able to pick up cards that were, autographed patch cards out of 5 for maybe $60. All right. So I was spending a decent amount of money, but not like I'd have to spend today to get an auto patch out of 5 on eBay. It's rare to be able to just only spend that amount of money for that type of card. So in 2017, my percentage of cards that I have out of the ones that have been made, in 2017, I was at 51%. So still doing fairly well, getting half the ones that were made, pretty good. By 2018, that dropped to 36%. 2019, 36%. In 2020, I only acquired 22% of the cards that were Wade Boggs cards that were made. By 2021, I was down to only 11% of the cards that I was able to acquire. Last year, when there was 1,057 cards, I only have 4%. I only have 44. I only have 44 cards from 2022. Now, again, I hadn't been looking as much, but there were some that I was picking up. But again, so many that every time these ones were listed, were just selling for way more than I thought they should, or the asking price was just outrageous. And I'm like, I'm not spending that amount of money on a Wade Boggs card. And so some of it may be my fault. Some of it may say, hey, John, to be a player collector for Wade Boggs, you're going to have to step up. You're going to have to spend, more money. You're devoting some of your hobby dollars to vintage. If you didn't do that, you'd be able to buy more Boggs cards. I realize that. But I think just the weight of all those cards. Also, I had given myself some targets, some goals for my collection. And for a while, I had been meeting those goals. Or I think I put these goals together maybe 3-4 years ago. That of the total number of cards that were made, as a percentage, my goal was to try to have 60%. I thought, if I owned 60% of all the Boggs cards that were made, that would be, a huge achievement. And for a while, I was hovering right around 60%, but over the last few years, I am currently down to 48%, so just under 50%. And when I look back, it's still a great collection, and I should be proud of it, and I am proud of it. But in terms of keeping up with those goals, I may have to readjust those goals, because again, the goal was 60%, and I'm now down to 48%. And then I said, okay, there's a ton of one-of-ones out there. In fact, just to give you a sense of my checklist here, of the total cards that I have in my checklist, I currently have, including all the one of ones, 11,258 cards in my Wade Boggs checklist. And the number of one cards, 2,861 one of ones of Wade Boggs. 2,861 one of ones. And he's a semi-star. I can only imagine how many one of ones of other players out there like Cal Ripken, Ken Griffey Jr., even some of the current players, Mike Trout. I'm sure he has, even though he hasn't had as many years of baseball cards as Wade Boggs has. I'm sure the number of one of ones for Trout just blow by Wade Boggs. But to have that many one of ones, and every seller who owns a one of one thinks that they have a $200, $300, $400, $500 card. With that many out there, his one of ones should not be that expensive, yet people think they can get a ton of money for it. But again, I sort of got off track there a little bit, sorry. But my goal, as I said, for total cards was 60%, and I'm down to 48. So then I said, okay, let's take all the one of ones out of the equation. So forgetting all the one of ones that may be impossible to find or too expensive to get, my goal is to have 70% of those remaining cards, I'm currently at 63%. Again, I had been right at that 70% for quite some time, but it's now down to 63%. Then I said, okay, with all these really low serial numbered cards, people asking so much money for them, let me just see what I can do in terms of all the cards that are serial numbered less than 10. So serial numbered 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, all the way to one of ones. Take them out of the equation. Ones that would be, I think, more reasonable to acquire in terms of the cost, and different parallels and things like that I could pick up rather cheaply, but continue to add to my Boggs collection. My goal there was 80%, and again, for a long time I was hitting that goal pretty close. I'm now down to 72%. Now, you may say, John, hey, 72% versus 80, or 63 versus 70, or 48 versus 60. You're still really close, and yes. But when you look at it and convert that to how many actual cards I'm behind, you're talking hundreds, because of just the number of cards in the checklist. So it may say, oh yeah, well, hey, I'm off by 7%. Well, that 7%, again, could be 300 or 400 cards that I'm behind on my goal. And it's just and again, every year there are hundreds more Boggs cards being produced. It's never ending. The goalpost is always moving. And so it's just a little disheartening, I guess, in terms of trying to maintain my player collection of Wade Boggs. Again, I'm not stopping, but it's just I'm just not able to keep up with my Boggs collection as I had in the past, and a lot of that has to do not just with the fact that I am using some of my hobby dollars to buy vintage baseball cards. That's certainly a factor, and that's on me. But it's also the card companies. I just don't think the card companies are producing cards with player collectors in mind, and I don't blame them. I think that the current collector, investor, dealer, whatever you want to call yourself, however you invest, which is fine. Enjoy the hobby, that's fine. But it just seems that people are buying these boxes, these packs, these cards on eBay, going into breaks. All they want are the low serial numbered cards, the autos, the patches. That's what they want. That's what they get, grade. Some of them trade, flip, this, whatever. That's what collectors want right now. And so that's what the card companies are producing. It doesn't matter to them, at least I don't think, that as a player collector, I get frustrated that there's a set with 19 different parallels for me to try to collect. It's becoming impossible. Or, hey, Boggs has a really cool auto in this set. Oh yeah, there's 3 versions. There's out of 10, out of 5, and out of 1. Well, again, if I'm not prepared to spend $150 plus on each of those versions, I won't be getting any. And some people out there may be willing to spend that much. With the collection I have and all the autograph cards and all the serial number cards I have and all the one-of-ones I have, it's becoming less and less of a reasonable ask of me to spend $150 or more for a Wade Boggs autograph serial numbered out of 10, or even in some cases 25. I'm just not going to do it. So with that, I hope this didn't turn into a rant, but hopefully thoughtful discussion, or just spewing of different thoughts that I had. Would love to know in the comments, what do you think about player collectors in general? Am I a little bit crazy, which I won't necessarily deny? Do you see player collectors being any player collectors moving forward? Am I part of a dying breed? Again, would love to know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video here, would appreciate you liking the video. With that, that's all I have for you. So until next time, thanks for watching.